boogeyman is real, and you found him.
True dark nets are not nets at all. Tor and protocols like it are anonymity and plausible deniability. Actual dark nets are kept well and truly hidden, and cannot be found by any means available to the average web surfer. Trust me. Just one example out of maybe 4 or 5 I have personally experienced with to illustrate what it takes. Do take special note that this involves a great deal of luck. A friend of mine works at a small insurance broker's office and asked me to fix a problem with his computer not recognizing the office scanner on the network. This is not related, just how I ended up there. I brought my laptop and noticed a WEP wireless net with high signal strength. Out of curiosity, I turn on a sniffer to pick out the password while I work on the scanner. A few hours later, I'm leaving, then I remember the sniffer. Got the pass, connected, poked around. So it's a basic home network. One system online with internet access, no firewall. Apparently no antivirus. For the hell of it, I drop in a back door before I leave. You never know what goodies you might run across. I get home and really start digging through the computer. Just your average home computer. Most interesting stuff are some tax returns. There's a couple of text files that have what appear to be passwords, random characters, and a couple of names. Not much interesting, so I put my own worm on it and leave it be for future use. Maybe. Weeks later, I'm arranging some proxies for a few of my bots when I realize that there are 4 new bots that I hadn't set up myself. Now, what I figured later is that the owner of that WEP machine, my friend's boss, had taken a file from it on a floppy, which my worm happily infected, which then spread to a few more machines that he used. This is where the interesting stuff begins. 2 of those machines had internet access, of course, but they had apparently never been used to actually access the internet. They both ran Windows 98, completely unpatched. They apparently had internet access only because they were physically networked with other machines that were used for internet access. Now, each of these machines had about 3 terabytes of storage, mostly apparently empty, but was actually packed near full of encrypted bytes. The stuff that was easily viewable included high amounts of personal information, including social security numbers and tax IDs, names, addresses, lists of families and friends, sometimes pets, sometimes a lot of details such as vehicles, clothing, height, weight, recent medical issues, high amounts of information. Not every listing had all of it. Some were just a name. But they all had were dates. Couldn't make much sense out of that. I mean, what I could make sense out of were bank accounts. Thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of account numbers. Institutions, safety deposit boxes, all over the world, South Africa, Russia, Brazil, everywhere. Nothing but the basic identity numbers and another date. No note of what they might be. As I was picking through one of those 2 machines, I noticed a file being written. I figured someone was using the computer at that moment, but the only command events were coming from my worm. Nobody was using a mouse or keyboard, so then I figured it was an automated system process. I watched what it was doing for a minute, then I realized the computer was communicating on another network that wasn't a protocol I recognized. And because I knew when it started writing and when it stopped, I was able to transcribe the entire life, which was about 78 megs. I assumed it was one file and not a chunk of something else, and I was right. It was still encrypted, but it turned out to be fairly simple. Since it was one file, I had a few educated guesses about what a file that size was. And my first was right. It was a movie, MPEG file. The title was just a random string. The video itself was an overhead view of 3 men sitting at a table. In the entire 15 minutes of the video, only one spoke. It sounded like gibberish. I figured it was code, or he was nuts. He said things like, broken banana strung red boot. He would pause, then say another string sentence. Kept going for about 10 minutes. The other 2 just watched him, One was drinking, which I assume was coffee. Finally, he leaned back and asked if they would leave his daughter alone. The guy drinking the coffee just shook his head quickly. The talker started crying. Really crying. Hard. He leaned forward again, and another nonsense sentence, and the video ended. Timestamp was about 20 minutes before the video was uploaded to the machine I got it from. I had a really weird feeling about it, but my best guess at the time was it was some kind of clip from a movie I hadn't seen. But what I saw was the streaming broadcast, the timestamp on the file just being the time that it was sent. In it, the man that had spoken in the first one was crying as a baby. As he stood over what appeared to be the corpse of a young girl, with her throat cut and blood all over the table that the three men had been sitting at in the first video. The other two men were still in the room, standing on either side, watching, smoking cigarettes. I didn't finish watching it. I only got about a minute or so in before it sank in what I was seeing. I've seen a lot in my time, and this was no movie. I cleaned my traces from those systems and hadn't looked back. What I'm still finding hard to believe is that from the computer I'd originally hacked, these other systems got infected by a floppy. As near as I can tell, the two storage computers were on opposite sides of the globe, one in LA and one in Beijing. The WEP computer I'd found was in Dallas, and two of the other infected computers were in Winnipeg. As far as I know, my friend's boss had not left the country. His brother-in-law had been visiting at the time, though.